by Scott Fried in English in Forest Hills, New York, United States. Now, Ms. Roth, how long did you stay in Czechoslovakia after you had come back?
After we came back, we came back in August 1945, and we left Czechoslovakia in May 1948.
Now, so you stayed there for 3 years in this girl's home?
Yes. It's 2.5 years, actually, not because we came like in April before Passover in 1946, and because part of the winter we were home in Willa. And in May 30th, 1948, we left Czechoslovakia to Paris.
Now, why Paris?
Because we wanted, told you that my father had the papers, the
to
affidavit.
go to America, sure.
And we got papers as students to come to America. My aunts who were here, we were rejected because those years they didn't want anybody to have here family. And if somebody had family, that was the law. They didn't let, they make difficulties.
Right.
And we went up to the council in Prague asking for the visa. We had all the papers, the passport, everything. We came up to ask for the visa, for the student visa. So he said, let me see whether you had any family there. So we were told, we said we should say no, because otherwise the visa will be rejected. And they said, well, I have to check. He went in, and 2 minutes later he comes out, you lied. You have family in New York, in the Bronx, and he gave us the address. So he says, you can't go as a student. If you want to wait for the quota, it's 7 years. So who wants to sit there for 7 years? And we knew already, I mean, we were not babies anymore, that the border will be closed. The Russians are taking over, and we left Czechoslovakia. After that, we decided to leave. We didn't want to wait the quota. And we left with the last train from Prague. After that, the borders were closed.
Right before the 48 revolution?
March 31st. The last day of March, they closed up the borders, and we were with a midnight train, we left Prague.
Okay, that answers. I was going to ask you how you got out of Czechoslovakia. Did you have any, entertain any thoughts of emigrating from Czechoslovakia to Israel?
We were thinking about it, but we had nobody in Israel. All what we had left from the family was here, the two aunts who lived in the Bronx. That was my father's two sisters, and in Cleveland, a brother of my mother.
But it may have been a thought if there was no family here.
Well, that's why we wanted to come here, because of the family, because we wanted to have somebody.
So how long did you stay in Paris?
Exactly 2 years.
What did you do in Paris?
Well, in Paris, you were supposed to be a citizen in order to be able to work, a permit. We had no permit, we were not citizens. So I worked, we made friends there, we met a very, very nice family there, Jewish family. He came from Hungary, his wife was from Poland. They had 3 boys, very, very nice boys. They had store, he was selling men's suits. And above the store was the factory where they were sewing them. So he offered me a job, and for my sister, he showed us how to do, what to sew, and then my sister got another job, somebody else, but I was working for them, putting buttons on the suits and making the hems, and that's how we lived.
So when were you finally able to immigrate to America?
And there we met friends. They advised what to do, this one, because everybody was in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
So finally in 1950, in June, we got the student visas, but we were not supposed to be sisters. The sisters were rejected. So my sister came as a cousin a week before me, and on a boat, and I came a week after her.
When did you arrive? June
8th. I was taken to Ellis Island.
On what ship?
I was Stratheden. It's an English. The ship was very, very, very nice service, beautiful ship. I arrived here on a Thursday afternoon. My aunts were there, but I couldn't acknowledge them because I was not supposed to have here anybody. My sister was there. I couldn't acknowledge her.
Describe the reaction as you sailed into New York Harbor when you saw the Statue of Liberty.
I saw the Statue of Liberty. I realized that I'm free. But the fright was still there. For months, maybe years, it was still there. I was afraid to look at a policeman. I was avoiding to see a policeman. For years, I was always afraid that they are after me. And I arrived here Thursday. For one night, I was taken to Ellis Island. I was in Ellis Island, and they had to put on a bond to let me out.
And you moved in with your family in New York?
No, we didn't want to. They were not rich people. Here we met a cousin who, his family was taken in 1942 to Treblinka, a young man. He survived, not from Treblinka. He was in hiding in Czechoslovakia. He was in Slovakia, and he survived. And he came out here. He wrote to Újlag to find out who. He came in 1945, end of 46 or 40. Anyhow, we were corresponding with him. He lived in Williamsburg. He still lives in Williamsburg, and he found an apartment for us. So
where'd you work to support yourselves?
I was not supposed. We were not supposed to be working because we came as students.
Right, but you worked, obviously.
I worked, got a Social Security, and I was working in a factory.
You met your husband there?
No. I met my husband here in 1952.
What was his name?
Eugene Roth.
Also a survivor.
Also a survivor.
And
he was in Buchenwald, and he died 15 years ago. He was working in the camp in Buchenwald with asbestos. And it looked like the asbestos doesn't come out right away. It attacks the stomach or the lung lining, and it comes out only 30 or 35 years later. And he died on mesothelioma because of that.
When did you and him marry?
We got married in 1954, May 4, 1954.
And after that, you raised your children. You left working.
Yes.
What were your children's names? Are your children's names? I'm sorry.
The oldest daughter is Evelyn.
She married?
She's single. Then I had twins, Arlene Roth and Elizabeth Roth.
And they're both married?
The two of them are married. Arlene lives in Edison, New Jersey. She has 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. And Elizabeth is married. She lives in Teaneck. She has 3 children, 2 girls and a boy.
Now, in the years that have gone past, you mentioned when you first came here that you were still fearful. What about now?
No, not that much anymore.
Well, but do you have, better yet, you've mentioned to me in our discussions that it's still something which you think about all the time. Do you have trouble sleeping?
Sleeping, I tell you what, last night I didn't sleep. It happens quite often, not too often, but it happens. I don't know why, whether it's that or not, but last night I think it was that because I was a little nervous. But sleeping happened once in a while, not too often that I have nightmares. I see the Germans running, the Germans shooting, but that happens not very often, once in a while.
Have you gone back to Czechoslovakia since?
To Czechoslovakia I went, but I didn't go back to Újlag. I was afraid. I was afraid of the memories. I went to Prague. I went to Brno, is a very nice city also. Went to Brno, went to Bratislava, and then I went to Hungary. With a group, especially when there are groups who go back to Auschwitz, to Poland. I don't want to go. I'm afraid. I don't want to go. My children begged me I should go back to Újlag. They want to come. They want to see where I grew up. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of the memories. My cousin, who lives in Williamsburg, went back because my grandparents are buried there. So he went to the cemetery. So he told me, your house is standing, your grandfather's house is a store, a supermarket like, and there are no Jews there, not even one Jew there. He went to the cemetery, he cleaned up the cemetery, he brought pictures from the grandmother's grave, but I don't want to go back.
Have you been to Israel?
Yes. To Israel was.
It's interesting, I asked you about Czechoslovakia and your feelings towards it back then, and they were very strong and patriotic.
Czechoslovakia,
right.
Yes.
It didn't seem like your family was very Zionistic, but...
No, not too much, because the times were good.
Right.
So they stayed.
What are your feelings towards Israel now, or what was it like when you went there?
Well, I can tell you that much. You asked me how my feeling is. I wanted to go to Israel. In 1947, in 1946, in that girls' home, we were learning Hebrew. For those people who were interested to go to Israel, I would have wanted to go to Israel. My sister didn't want. My sister wanted to come here because this is the family. I made friends already in the home there with girls, and I felt that many of them went to Israel. I wanted to go with them. I spoke Hebrew fluently. I wrote Hebrew well. And then my sister got the visa, the papers to Paris, and the director from the home found out that I want to go to Israel and I want to leave my sister. So he said, no, you can't do that. That's all what you have from the family, you stay with your sister. So, and she had already the papers to Paris, so I remained. So my feeling towards Israel are very...
Any regrets for not having moved there?
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether I would have met my husband. And he was a special man, a real special man. But I found out while we were already married, that around the same time when I had the question coming to here or coming to Israel, they were in Italy. He was with his brother in Italy, and they had the same friction. His brother wanted to come here because they had family here. But they had family in Israel also. His grandmother and grandfather was there.
So you could have met him in Israel too, in other words.
Yeah, but it was meant to come here.
Absolutely. I asked you also your feelings about Czechoslovakia's patriotism. What are your feelings towards the U.S. then?
Well,
been home for 40 years.
Yeah, I like to be here. I like America. I don't know what's going to be here.
Well, that's my next question. What's your feelings on the outlook?
Many times I'm afraid. I don't want, God forbid, to go through something similar again, or my children to go through something similar again. I remember after we got married, my husband had the uncles in Israel, and with 4 uncles there, and aunts, and the grandmother was still alive. And they used to tell us, why don't you move to Israel? Move now while you can do it on your own, not when you will be forced. So many times the news, and especially when it comes to elections, and the people who are running for president, so it's worried.
Are you still a very religious person?
Yeah, I'm still Orthodox. My children are Orthodox too.
So you never lost your faith through all this?
No.
And I'll ask you one last question. I know for you it's not easy to tell your story, and you really haven't discussed it too much before.
No, I couldn't talk about it.
What's your general message? What would you have people of my generation tell the next generations? What should we speak of or learn from your and all of those experiences?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't believe those people who say that it's not true, because it's very true. And according to me, faith keeps you going. If not the faith, we would not have survived. Even though, no matter how bad it was, there was not one evening when I went to sleep without a prayer. In Auschwitz, I'm talking about Auschwitz or wherever. So prayer, and also I saw it now when my husband, should rest in peace, was very sick. The fate was keeping him for 7.5 years. And the doctors told me that it's a miracle in itself that he survived so many years, while already when it was diagnosed what the sickness is, he was 7.5 years. And in the end, the doctor told me, said, you know what kept your husband alive? Your faith. His faith and your faith and the children's faith. But it wasn't long enough.
Thank you, Mrs. Roth.
Thank you. This picture is of my grandfather, my mother's father. The picture was taken August 1937 and was given to me by my uncle, my mother's brother, who used to live in Cleveland. He's not alive now, but he gave me the picture. The person on the right side with the telephone is was my father, who was in the First World War. The picture was given to me by my aunt, his sister, who used to live in the Bronx. This picture in the front row, from left to right, is an uncle, my father's sister's husband. The next one is my grandfather, his father, my father's father, and my father's mother. In the back row, standing from left to right, my father, my mother, my older sister, his sister, younger sister, and her name was Ethel. The next one is a sister also, her name was Malka. And this, the one with the baby, is also a sister, the wife of the man who is sitting in the front. Her name was Yitte. And the next man is his youngest brother. His name was Moshe. I don't know the English names. I only know the Hebrew names. None of them is alive, only my sister. Whoever is on the picture is not alive, only my sister.
How did the picture survive?
The picture was given to me by my aunt. My father's father had two sisters here in the Bronx, and they gave them to me. So we just make a copy of the picture, and that's how I got it. This picture we found after we came home from the concentration camp. One of the neighbors gave it to us. The picture was taken either in 1940, I think 1940. My sister is, there are five girls there. The middle one is my sister. The other ones are friends, but I wouldn't remember their names. This is my younger sister who did not survive Auschwitz.
Where is this?
In Uylak. It was taken in Uylak. This was my husband. This picture was made, I think, in 1950. That was before I knew him yet. And he died in 1981, June 20th.
Where is this picture taken?
Hmm?
Where is this picture taken?
I'm not sure whether it was taken here or it was taken in Italy. I think in Italy before he came to America. He came to America in January 1950. And I think that picture was made in Italy. This picture was taken near Paris. The name of the town is Lumini, in 1949. That summer we went out for a week vacation and in the country. From the right side is my sister, and it's myself and a friend. It was taken in 1949. This picture was taken in 1950, just before we came to America. It was taken in Paris. Picture is of myself.
Look at the light tonight.
Okay, it's pretty obvious, Mr. Roth, you have your entire family here, so why don't you introduce them all for us?
Okay, from right to left. The first one is sitting. Tamara, Tamara Roth. Okay. Rivki, my daughter Rivki Atkin. This one is Tzvi, her son, Atkin. Myself, Shuli Atkin. My daughter Chani. That's Evelyn Roth. And Tamara Roth.
Eliana Roth.
Oh, Eliana, I'm sorry, I didn't see who is sitting there. Eliana Roth. Okay. The standing in the back from right to left. Mayor Atkin.
No, you forgot somebody.
Somebody standing right here.
Oh, I didn't see that. Sharona Atkin. Mayor Atkin. Jack, my son-in-law, Jack Atkin. My daughter Javi, Elizabeth Roth. David Roth. And Ira Roth, my son-in-law.
All right, well, let me start. Evelyn, you're the oldest?
Yes.
Okay, I'll ask you very simply, what was it like? You grew up in a family where both parents were survivors, and you were obviously old enough to understand that. What was it like growing up here with them?
Well, first of all, we didn't know anybody whose parents weren't Holocaust survivors, so everybody we went to school with just about had the same or similar backgrounds. And I think that as a kid, and I think my sisters would confirm this, we thought that what happened to our parents in some way would happen to us. It just seemed a rite of adulthood. Obviously, as we got older, we realized it was something very unusual. But you feel different than everyone else because you know that what occurred to your family didn't happen to anyone else. We didn't have grandparents. Everybody else did, except, again, for the kids we went to school with. That's what it was like.
Let me try either one of the twin daughters.
I was just talking with Ira this morning. I was trying to remember when I became aware of what my parents went through, and I really don't remember. I think I was always aware of it somehow. And the same thing that Hani said is that almost all the kids that we were friendly with, their parents went through it. It wasn't anything unusual. And I also felt the same thing. I felt like when I reached a certain age that I knew that my parents had gone through the war, I felt like something horrible was going to happen to me. It was just something that was inevitable.
Was it normal discussion, or was it kept?
No.
In our house, it was very normal.
Very open.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have friends over. It was always talk about the lager. And it was just, that's why we grew up, just, it was part of us, because we always heard it. We did speak about it.
It was more daddy than me.
Yeah, but I
that's
remember
so
you
better.
speaking about it a lot.
Yeah, on Friday nights often.
Friday
we would
nights,
sit
and
and they
also
would
like
tell us about their lives
the
before
Seder,
the war.
right? During
Yes,
the Seder?
yes, during the Seder.
It was always the kind of thing I was always afraid, how am I going to handle something like that? Because I just assumed I would have to. And it was almost a relief to know that shouldn't happen to anybody. And unfortunately it did happen, but that's not the normal rite of passage to adulthood that most people have.
Now, Jack and then Ira afterwards, both of you married into the family. Now, I don't know if your background is similar, but if it isn't, has it changed your life in any way to have married into a family where this is obviously something which is discussed very often?
My background really is dissimilar, although I have some distant relatives, from my parents' side, but my parents are both American born. I think it was quite revealing to me to enter into a household like this, to realize, although I had always heard about, of course, and knew about the Shoah, but to have a sense coming into this family to appreciate what these people have gone through and to see the impact that it had not only on my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, may he rest in peace, but on their children. It was obvious that this has been the watershed event of their lives, and it has touched everything that they've done, and from the time they were kids up to the present time, it has had a major impact on their lives. And I think I had a greater appreciation for that once I was fortunate enough to come into this family.
You right?
Yeah, it's my family also. Fortunately, was not involved in the Holocaust. My mother was in Germany for about 6 months, and my father was born here. I don't think there's any Jew for whom it's not a real event, because it's a part of all of our heritages. And I think it's not something that's come up a lot. I think that my wife and her family are fortunate that I think that her parents handled it pretty well, and it was something that they discussed, but they weren't obsessed with, and somehow they got through it without being scarred as much as others were, and they ended up being pretty normal, which is, the best thing that could happen to them. It's something that you have to be aware of, but it's not something that you can be totally absorbed in. And I think the important thing now is although Lefke says that this is not a normal thing, I think it's unfortunately something that has recurred throughout the lives of the Jews, and I think that our children have to understand what it's about, not just because it happened and it was something significant, but because it might happen again. And I want them to know what happened and to be aware of it, and really to be on the lookout for it.
If I could just say one other thing, somewhat along those lines, when you asked me about the effect that it's had on me or my appreciation of this, I have a tremendous appreciation for my father-in-law, may he rest in peace, and my mother-in-law. I think it's very inspiring for me and for my children, for them to see how strong a person their grandparents were. Especially my mother-in-law, she's really just shown unbelievable faith and strength in her convictions to be able to come from where she's been and to continue her life and to successfully raise her children and to now see, with God's help, grandchildren continuing along and belief in her faith. I think it's very important for our kids to see and to appreciate.
May you answer what I was going to say. I want to thank you for letting me tell the story. Go ahead.
Yeah, may I say something? She said that they grew up without grandparents. I remember when she was 2.5 years old, she had a friend, a very good friend, it was Mother's Day. And those children had a grandmother. So they were getting ready to go to visit the grandmother. So she came home crying. They were next door, practically next door, those people lived. She came home crying. She wants to see her. She wants to go to her grandmother. What do you do with a 2.5-year-old child? How do you tell her that Hitler killed them? Said, no, you don't. You can't go to your grandmother. Your grandmother is very far. But I want to. And she starts to cry. She lay down on the couch and kicking and screaming. She wants to go to her grandmother. So finally I said, your grandmother is in heaven. We can't go out there. But I want my grandmother. And I was frustrated. I didn't know what to do. And suddenly the telephone rings, and my aunt calls from the Bronx, my father's sister, and says, Ethel, you sound very, very upset. What's going on? So I told her what's going on. She says, let me talk to her. Said, why didn't you tell her that she has a grandmother, Grandma Schreiber? I didn't tell her that I'm her grandmother, but I am a grandmother. So she wanted to talk to her, so she came to the telephone. She went to the telephone. I said, okay, somebody wants to talk to you. She goes to the telephone, and I watched her face. Her face started to shine, because the voice from the other end said, I am a grandmother, my name is Grandma Schreiber. Until today, she's not alive, but when we talk about her, she's Grandma Schreiber.
Well, like I was saying before, I think everyone standing here is always the best example of who really won. And thank you for letting me tell the story, and I'll do my best to pass it on for years and years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was nice meeting you.